once again from the Cowtown Hamfest 2018, Mark Colross, KD5RXT. Hopefully I'm saying Mark's last name correctly. Colross, C-U-L-R-O-S-S. Mark Colross, a member of the Cowtown Amateur Radio Club, the club that hosts the Hamfest, cowtownhamfest.com, I think it's .com. Mark presents how to connect a Yaesu System Fusion WIRESx room over a private mesh network using Arden mesh networking right now.
Today's episode of Ham Radio 2.0 is brought to you by Arden, the Amateur Radio Emergency Data Network. The Amateur Radio Emergency Data Network is an open-source project that brings emergency communications into the 21st century. With easily available commercial equipment, you can build a low-cost, high-speed network. Visit the Arden website at www.arden.org for more information. Arden-branded equipment labels, embroidered patches, and apparel are available on the website by clicking on the Shop menu button.
All right, it's 10 o'clock, I think. Courtesy of HRO? Curtin. Okay. Good morning. I'm Mark Colross, Kilo Delta 5 Romeo X-Ray Tango, and I am a member of the Cowtown Amateur Radio Club and enjoy presenting like this. Just want to say thanks to everybody that's attending today. We appreciate your support. This actually helps us to fund our activities for the year, our primary fundraiser. Throughout the day, if you have any questions or need any assistance, look for somebody with either a pink badge or a pink shirt, or maybe both, and we'll help you with regard to the Hamfest as best we can. There are limits to what we can do. Hamfest related stuff we can certainly help you with. Today's presentation is on emergency communications using Yaesu System Fusion over a mesh network, and the key point here is with no internet required. Just want to say up front, I am not an expert on anything. I just like playing with things and figuring things out. I get to actually enjoy what I learn twice. Once when I learn it myself, and a second time when I help other people learn it. The presentation is actually available electronically, and more importantly, there's a walkthrough document that describes how to set everything up. So if you are interested in either the presentation or the walkthrough document, send me an email at kd5rxt@awrl.net, and I will forward you the link to my Google Drive that has both the presentations and the document. In addition, it actually has last year's presentations, which some of them also relate to DMR operations as well as mesh networking. There was some discussion in last hour about BBHN versus Arden. That's covered in last year's presentation. And I apologize to those of you who actually have attended the first hour, because the first part of this is going to be very, very similar to the first part of the first hour. But for the benefit of those who didn't attend the first hour, I'll cover it. So I am actually using hardware called DV Mega. It is a board that actually sits on top of a Raspberry Pi. And so we're going to cover today, what is a DV Mega, where do I buy one, what software do I need, where do I get it, what else do I need and should I get, kind of briefly cover BBHN and Arden as far as the mesh network, what do you need for that, and then the key point of the presentation is how do I operate Yaesu System Fusion using this hardware, combination of hardware, and not have to have internet access in order to be able to communicate using my YSF radios. And then where do I go for more info? And we're going to have a question and answer session at the end. So a DV Mega is essentially an RF hotspot. If you think of it as a very, very low powered repeater, it's operating about 10 milliwatts. You can see there the description of what hardware is on board. It comes in multiple models. You can get it to sit on top of an Arduino Uno. You can get it to sit on top of an Arduino Mega. Or in my case, the one I use is the one that sits on top of a Raspberry Pi. There's actually other hardware that will also serve this same purpose. The OpenSpot is a popular device. Somebody asked in the last hour about the DV Mini versus the DV Mega. DV Mini plugs into the USB port on your laptop and does the same kind of job, where the DV Mega sits on top of some processor, in my case the Raspberry Pi. And then I'll cover that in a second. You can get more information on the DV Mega itself at the website shown in the bottom there. So where do I buy one? You can buy it either directly from the guy who produces it in the Netherlands, or the second bullet there, you can buy it from the universal source of everything, Amazon.com. You can also get it from Gigaparts, and Gigaparts sells, well, actually everybody, Amazon as well, sells kits. So if you don't have a Raspberry Pi yet, you can get the Raspberry Pi and the case and the power supply and the DV Mega and an antenna all in one package. In my case, I had the Raspberry Pis already, so I just bought the DV Mega only and had the antennas as well. The Raspberry Pi 3 is recommended, but if you have a Raspberry Pi 2, it'll certainly work. The extra horsepower on the Raspberry Pi 3 is beneficial. The DV Mega comes in two varieties, a single band version and a dual band version. You can see the list prices there, €90 for the single and €135 for the dual. Those list prices haven't changed, but the actual price has gone up a little bit since I bought mine. You can see the dual band there is currently $169 from Amazon.com. I heard a rumor that they discontinued the DV Mega, but they're still certainly available. So where do I start? I'm going to load the latest version of Raspbian on my Raspberry Pi. If you have a Raspberry Pi that's already running with an older version of Raspbian, not a problem. The detailed walkthrough actually shows you how to upgrade it to the latest and greatest release. So you don't have to actually go download the image and reburn your micro SD. You can do an upgrade command that'll get you up to the latest and greatest. Put your whatever you have, your micro SD, whether it's new or old, just burned, put it in the Raspberry Pi. Turn your Raspberry Pi on and log in as the Pi user, and you can see the default password there. Okay, we're going to configure Raspbian, and there are settings that are critical and there are settings that are nice to have, and the walkthrough gives all those details of how to set everything. And then you're going to do an update on the operating system so you have the latest and greatest. Again, that's the actual command there. Sudo apt get update, $, sudo apt get -y dist upgrade. The first command says update whatever version I have to the latest of that version, and then the dist upgrade says give me the latest distribution. There is a lot of discussion on the internet about whether upgrade is better or dist upgrade is better. Dist upgrade is dangerous. Upgrade doesn't do a complete job. I always use dist upgrade and I have not had any trouble. That's not a guarantee. That's my experience. Personal experience, and that's as far as it goes. We're going to actually disable any console port usage by the operating system. And specifically for Raspberry Pi 3, we have to disable Bluetooth, unfortunately, because it interferes with the port that the DV Mega uses. Okay, and again, this is kind of a broad overview. The details are in the detailed walkthrough, again, which is available electronically. So we have to make a place for MMDVM to put its logs, and then have to get a couple more packages, have to actually download and install. Okay, this is the real workhorse. MMDVM host is what's doing most of the work. So we go get the latest version of MMDVM host, build it, and configure it, set it up so that it automatically runs whenever we boot the Raspberry Pi. And then we're going to go grab IRC DDB Gateway because it works hand in hand with MMDVM host to make this all possible. Okay, so just a little side for a minute. What is the mesh network, in case you're not familiar with it? The idea behind mesh networking is mobile ad hoc networking. Well, that's just another way of saying what? That means that anybody can come into an area where a mesh network is active, turn on their mesh node. Their node will automatically join the mesh and will automatically provide whatever services you configured your mesh node for, and or have available other services that other nodes make available. The fourth bullet there is probably the biggest mouthful. The network is self-discovering, self-configuring, self-advertising, and self-healing. Okay, the self-discovering part is when I turn my node on, it's going to look for a mesh network and join it. The self-configuring is each node, by the name you give it, is going to pick an exclusive IP address range, and so each node is going to configure itself so it doesn't interfere with anybody else on the mesh. Self-advertising, that is, if I have an IP camera hooked to one of my nodes and I've registered that IP camera in my node software, my node will make that IP camera available across the mesh. And self-healing is if I'm using that IP camera and I'm streaming video across the mesh and one of the nodes my data happens to be streaming through goes away, the mesh will automatically reroute that stream for me without me having to do anything. That's the self-healing part of it. So in case you're not familiar with the mesh network, just think of it as a very long Cat5. Mesh nodes can easily communicate distances of 5 miles. There are reports of people doing 20 miles. As long as you have good line of sight, you can go as far as you can. Again, the line of sight is the important thing. Much better than trying to string a 20-mile Cat5. So anything you can do over a Cat5 cable, you can do over the mesh network. Okay, so what do I need in order to put up a mesh network? So I'm going to combine hardware and firmware. The hardware, original development of BBHN, which Hamnet, was done on the Linksys 54GL routers, a family of routers. Recently, the last couple of years, the Ubiquity family of routers are also have firmware available to load on them to turn them into mesh nodes. The Ubiquity routers come in 3 flavors that we as hams can use. The M2 family is a 2.4 gig standard Wi-Fi. The M5 family is a 5 gig standard Wi-Fi. And the M9 family is 900 megahertz, which is within our ham band allocation, so we can make use of those as well. Those are normally business-only routers, but as hams, we can use them. The 2.4 gig network is just severely overloaded. Very, very noisy, high noise floor. So the Arden specifically version of mesh firmware provides us 2 additional channels that are not available to the commercial routers, and they designate them as channel -1 and -2. They are within our ham band allocation, but they are not in commercial routers. So when we operate on channel -1 or channel -2, we're actually operating in clear space that only hams are in, so it's much better signal to noise. The M5s in the 5 gigahertz allocation for standard Wi-Fi, there are a much larger number of channels, and therefore it's less likely you'll find interference. And if you do find interference on a particular channel, there's a lot of choices to go to as an alternate channel. I have no experience with the M9 family, but it is available to us as hams. And then we load special firmware on there, either BBHN or Arden. Those are 2 flavors of mesh networking. And built into each of them is the magic that does all the cross-connecting and interconnecting and automatically connecting and automatically routing. That's the OLSR firmware. That's optimized linking something routing. I don't remember what the something is. Okay, so specifically the topic of today's presentation is how do I operate Yaesu System Fusion over the mesh? I am going to configure my Raspberry Pi DV Mega combo, and what I'm actually configuring is MMDVM host, and the file that specifically is mmdvm.ini. And I'm going to go actually enable System Fusion Network. These are standard values with the exception of this one. I'm either going to I need to set it one of 2 ways. If I'm running the server, if I'm editing the INI file on the same machine that I'm running the YSF gateway server on, then I will put in that my gateway is at 127.0.0.1. That is a standard designator in internet IP address parlance for also known as local host. It just means my machine, my local IP address machine. If I'm on a DV Mega Raspberry Pi where the server is not running locally, then I'm going to provide the host name .local.mesh for the device that is running the server. Okay, let me put that in English for a second. I have 2 Raspberry Pis in the room here. One of them up here on the desk is dvmega-mjc1, and the other one on a different mesh node back in the corner is dvmega-mjc2. So if I'm running my YSF gateway server on -mjc1, I'm going to configure this as 127.0.1 because my server is on the same Raspberry Pi. For the guy back in the corner, I'm going to configure him as dvmega-mjc1.local.mesh, saying his server is going to be up here on this Raspberry Pi. Okay, and again, the rest of them are standard values. Okay, so as far as operating Yaesu System Fusion, this gives you the ability to use WIRESx in a very limited but useful fashion. So when you use WIRESx that is available on a repeater, you have the ability to go to a particular room, and you can press the WIRESx button and the repeater will actually, your radio will beep. I have an FT2DR, so I'll describe what happens with the FT2DR. I push the WIRESx button, it communicates with the repeater says, yes, I have WIRESx capability, it sends back a signal, my radio beeps a particular way. And then it goes into a menu where I can then choose which room from a list. Actually, I have to ask the repeater for the list, and then from that list I can choose a particular room. Okay, so when we're operating this capability, your radio is still talking to a repeater. That repeater is your dvmega. It's a very low power repeater. And the server under the covers is providing that same WIRESx connectivity and capability. So my radio will query the dvmega and say, hey, I'm trying to go WIRESx mode. Do you have any rooms available? The YSF gateway software that's running will actually report back, yep, I sure do. And so my radio will beep the same way it does as if I'm on a repeater. And I will have a choice that says, I don't remember the exact verbiage, I'll turn it on here in a second, but it's choose which room I want. Okay, I have configured my YSF gateway to provide a room number 14728. That happens to be the frequency of our 2-meter repeater, 147.28. And the room name is K5Cal, happens to be our club ID call sign. So my radio will actually show K5Cal room number 14728 on the display. I pick that specific room, and I now, via WIRESx, have connected my radio to the server on my mesh node with no internet required whatsoever. Normally, that connectivity would go out to some Yaesu server, and the Yaesu server manages rooms. Okay, so you've got a piece of software called YSF Gateway running on your Raspberry Pi that's doing the same function that the Yaesu server would normally do, albeit in a much, much simpler way, but simple but capable enough for you to interconnect multiple Yaesu System Fusion radios across a mesh network. Okay, so as it says here, for YSF operations using this MMDVM host and YSF gateway, you simply activate WIRESx mode on your radio, select the room you want, and you operate just like you would over a repeater, he says. Magic happens. And we say the exact same thing again. All right, so again, I mentioned it before, there is a detailed walkthrough document that gives you the step-by-step configuration, what all software is necessary, what all settings are necessary, and what hardware is necessary. So I have a dvmega up here on the table. I have a dvmega back there interconnected via the mesh. I have 2 Yaesu System Fusion radios, and if I remember how to operate them. Actually, who has a YSF radio in here? You mind participating? Okay, so go into DN mode and tune to 432.475. Okay, press your WIRESx button. Did you get the rising tone return? Uh, 475. And I'm actually on the other one on 432.500. Okay, so you got the return. So, 1 second. I can't see the screen. Press the search and direct. Actually, you have an FT2DR? Okay, so we're on the same thing. And then press the all button. Okay, it should give you a room list. Second room would be 14728 K5 Cal. Tap on it. Actually, set the highlight to it and tap on it. Okay, so you should have the WIRESx menu that shows at the top 14728 K5 Cal, and then it's got two categories, emergency and news station. Don't worry about those. You should be able to key up and ID or whatever. So you're on this hotspot. I'm on that hotspot back there. And when I push the right button, KD5RXT test, my digital data is going in that hotspot back there, RF, streaming across the mesh to the server up here, and then because we're both in the same room, being rebroadcast on RF on the second hotspot, and you're getting that. Likewise, when you key in, your RF is coming in this hotspot, and the server is on here, so it's coming directly to the server. The server is streaming across the mesh to the other hotspot because we're in the same room, and it's coming out RF over there. So if you had these two mesh nodes separated by miles, two people with Yaesu System Fusion radios could take advantage of that mesh network connectivity and the software running on the two Raspberry Pis and be able to use their YSF radios in an emergency communication system without requiring internet connectivity. That's the magic that's going on there. The things that are doing it, so let's recap. So obviously we have a mesh network. So the mesh network is providing our Cat5 connectivity. We have a Raspberry Pi with a DV Mega setting on it. That's providing our, if you want to call it, our micro repeater capability. We have MMDVM host, which is controlling that DV Mega, and cooperating with that is another package called YSF Gateway that actually comes with MMDVM host. YSF Gateway is doing the Yaesu System Fusion functionality to provide the server that's necessary for the Yaesu System Fusion data stream, digital data streams to be shared. Questions? Yes, sir.
Now, your room list, those are the YSF rooms, correct?
Some of them are. Okay, so one of the pieces that you have to modify is YSF host.txt. And that comes with a standard Yaesu room list. You could strip all those out if you want. I mean, they're on just a private network, so you could use any of those as well, or you could strip them out and have only your single room, or you could have only the rooms you want to make available. But yes, because YSF host.txt has the standard Yaesu room list, then you get the standard Yaesu room list with our added room that we define uniquely for our use. And I was going to say something about that. I forget what I was going to say. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying, but I didn't know the fact that some of the other rooms that are linked up using YSF, well, when they're locally, so I didn't know if that was something I could add the host entry for that ran my.
So MMDVM, actually, not sure why it switched to that screen. MMDVM host and YSF gateway do have the ability to actually say, I want to connect to the real YSF servers. And so via this capability, you could go in RF here, stream over the internet, and get to the real Yaesu servers and join any of those rooms through your RF hotspot. We don't take advantage of that capability because we're assuming we're internet disconnected. So yeah, good question. I'm sorry, and I forgot to repeat the question. The question was, sorry about that. The question was, when the list comes, when you do turn on WIRESx mode and then do search all, the list that comes up includes some standard Yaesu System Fusion defined rooms. And so are those available? Well, they are available if you are internet connected, but in this case, we're talking about not being internet connected. So really, they're still available. They're just not connected out to the rest of the world as that room number. So they could still be used on the private network, but they won't be connected to the world. Thanks for asking. Yes, sir.
To reach the next node, which might be 15 miles away, what kind of antenna will I need to connect to the DV Mega? And do I need a stronger amplifier between the Mega and the antenna?
Okay, so your DV Mega is just doing local RF comms.
Okay.
It's not actually talking, these two DV Megas are not talking to each other via RF. They're actually talking to each other over the mesh network. So, the question was, what kind of antenna and what kind of power and what kind of amplifier do I need to be able to connect multiple of these DV Mega nodes? They do not connect to each other via RF. They only connect to each other via network. And the mesh network is the thing that's doing the distance for you. So you'll need mesh network nodes which have connectivity over that distance.
So what's the limit range of each node, to connect to that,
Each mesh node,
yeah, each one that
they can easily do 5 miles line of sight. There are reports of them doing 20 miles line of sight, but you need a really good, clear line of sight picture and a very good aim. So the mesh network, that you can put, there are some nodes, this particular style of node has the antenna built in. Where's the other one? No, not that one. The one back there actually has external antennas, so you can hook dishes or planar antennas, planar arrays, what have you, up to it. So the mesh itself can go miles, and these are pretty high power devices, 18 dBms. dBm? Yeah, I think I always forget dBm or dBW. I think it's dBm. Hundreds of milliwatts, and at 5 gigahertz, that's a lot of power. The hotspot itself is just for local RF communications, and at 10 milliwatts is its limit. And if you put it up on a high spot, 10 milliwatts will get you a fair distance, but you're not trying to cover a wide area via RF with these. Yes, sir.
Let's say you have an event going on here and you have a local private mesh room with YSL, but you want somebody in Dallas, let's say, that can connect RF. Does your room get published into the YSL server list?
Okay.
Would that be done like that so that somebody, say in Lubbock, Texas, could talk into your report?
Right, and the question is, we have defined our own custom room here, 14728, and it's certainly available across our private network. Is it possible to make that room available outside to the rest of the world? And the answer to that is, if you register your room number, which Yaesu provides the capability to do that, then they will effectively publish your room number. And so when you are on the worldwide internet, then your room is available to everybody everywhere. When you're in a situation where you have no internet, it's available just across your private net. So that is possible. We have not actually registered our room. We just use it privately across the mesh. Good question. Others? Yes, sir.
Talk about DB Mega, but given changes in the program, would a Shark RF do this as well?
Yes. No, I have no experience, but I believe anything that will run MMDVM host will certainly work the same way. And I believe that's what's running under the covers. So the question was, will a Shark RF work as well? And so the ones I'm familiar with are OpenSpot. We've certainly made OpenSpot play nicely with the DV Mega. The DV Mini, which we talked about in the last session, and then Shark RF, I would expect would be able to have the same capability. I just happen to have, only experience with the DV Mega, so that's what I've made play.
Shark RF and OpenSpot.
Okay,
Shark RF is the company that OpenSpot is providing.
gotcha.
So if they ever actually make a second device, they threaten to do it like 2 years now, then you'll have Shark RF will make OpenSpot and whatever else. The OpenSpot, yeah.
The OpenSpot is the device. Shark RF is the manufacturer. Okay, the provider. Other questions? All right. Well, we only took 30 minutes. Come on, you got to ask more questions. Okay, let me actually pull it. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me repeat again. If you're interested in either the presentation or the detailed walkthrough, send me an email, kt5rxt@arrl.net, and I will send you a link to the Google Drive, and it has both the last hour and this hour presentation. It's the same detailed walkthrough for both of them because it covers all three modes, YSF, DMR, and D-Star. And there will also be links to last year's presentations, which cover some information on mesh networking and cross-connecting BBHN with ARDN and cross-connecting 5 gigahertz with 2.4 gigahertz and what have you. So the detailed document. It has, basically it starts from the fresh and, it covers again the information on what is the DV Mega and where do I get it, and then how do I configure the operating system. And there are some things that are critical to the way we use the Raspberry Pi, and there are some things that are nice to have, like if you're familiar with SSH or VNC, it's nice to be able to SSH into your Raspberry Pi. That's basically gives you command line capability. VNC gives you graphical capability. It's like being able to remotely access my Raspberry Pi without having to have a monitor and a keyboard on it. There's a command again to upgrade the operating system in the middle of the screen there. And then setting the directory where the MMDVM is going to log all of its files. If you have to troubleshoot, those logs are very detailed. Actually, you can configure how detailed they are, but they're very good for troubleshooting. Load a couple more packages, and then, so MMDVM host is, again, the workhorse that's doing most of the magic. You have to build it and then set it up. I actually create scripts to automatically start, and you notice the first step where my cursor is right now. The first thing it does is kill any versions of MMDVM host that are running, and that allows me to just run the script to restart that capability. Pauses for a certain amount of time. The DV Mega is a piece of hardware, and it's actually got a processor on it, and when it gets power applied and reset removed, it actually takes a finite amount of time for it to be ready. So I found that if you wait 15 seconds from startup before you actually try talking to the DV Mega, it actually works better. Hence the 15-second sleep here. And then it just runs MMDVM host. Likewise, if you're running in graphical mode, it's nice to have the graphical operating system, the look and feel, start MMDVM host automatically for you and run it in a terminal so that you can get like, and I don't know what that one went away. So this is my MMDVM host terminal window. I can see the status, like when I keyed up my radio, it's still in X mode. You can see the data going by of the activity over the DV Mega. And you can see that actually what's in the right-hand column there is the names of the rooms that got fed back to me. And then I select 14728. So you can troubleshoot pretty well in that terminal with the stuff that's scrolling by. Whoops. Didn't give me the room. So you see I've selected that. Okay. Anyway, back to this guy. So I have the operating system automatically start a terminal and run MMDVM host in that terminal. Instructions on downloading IRC-DB gateway. If you look at last year's presentations, the method of getting IRC-DB gateway was slightly different. You were able to go to a host name URL. For some reason, he's changed from an HTTP server to an FTP server, and you have to go to this specific IP address. Whether that will change again, I don't know, but the document has the latest information that I found. And then when you load IRC-DB gateway and run it, the configuration, it's a long, painful process to configure it. It asks a bunch of questions, and so let me put a plug in here. I'm a software guy by trade, by train. My mind is twisted in a certain way that I'm good at writing software. So I'm very comfortable at the command line, and I prefer to actually go load the software, build it myself, configure it myself, and understand 100% of what it's doing. That's not everybody's cup of tea. Fortunately, there are smart people out there who do all that work and then write web page interfaces to all this stuff and make images available with web interfaces. One of the newest ones is called PyStar, and we've got a club member who's actually out of town this weekend, but he and I have this discussion over and over about what's better, get an image and use the image capability and much easier on the user, or do it from scratch like I like to do. He's never going to change my mind. I'm never going to change his mind. But there's advantages to both. I don't say that using an image is a bad thing. In fact, I strongly encourage you to use an image, because if you're not comfortable at the command line, or you prefer not to be at the command line, the images like PyStar, for example, make it very, very, because you have a web-based interface and you just turn things on and off from the web-based interface. So if you haven't played with it, I would start with one of those images and make it easy on yourself. And then if you so desire, or if you have an interest or get more comfortable with it and go look at it at the command line, that so be it. That's your choice. I'm not going to tell you it's bad to do the web interface. I think it's very good, actually. So this is the command line interface, and you suffer the pain of answering 150 questions. And once you're done with that, then you still have to go edit the file and set it appropriately like you want. I'm sorry, this is for DMR. Let me skip down to the YSF section. Okay, whoops, still in DMR. And that's D-Star, which is also covered. All right, we're finally in YSF world. So it says to operate YSF, you just use your radio like you normally do. Sorry, daggone it. Okay, stop. You use your radio like you normally do on a repeater in WIRESx mode. You're going to go make certain changes. Basically what this page says is disable DMR and enable System Fusion. But again, these two lines right here are set depending on whether you're on the same machine that the server's running on, or on a different machine than the server's running on. And I'm sorry, you also disable P25. I don't have any P25 radios, so I have no experience with those. This is the line that does the magic of adding the room to the YSF host.txt file, so that the YSF gateway will then advertise our 14728 room is available for use, and then automatically set up YSF gateway to run just like we did MMDVM hosts. And likewise set the operating system up to automatically start that in a terminal. And then magic happens, poof, that cloud in the middle. Basically, if you follow the steps in the walkthrough, my hope is that it will get you to the point where you can reproduce exactly what we did here today. I don't think I said it already, but MMDVM host is capable of running all three modes. Actually, I'm sorry, all four modes. That would be DMR, D-Star, Yaesu System Fusion, and P25. It is not recommended to try and get a single Raspberry Pi with a single DV Mega sitting on top of it to run all four of those modes at the same time. It'll be extremely frustrating, because the MMDVM host software, rightfully so, is set up in a way where, let's say somebody keys up a DMR radio, it goes into DMR mode. It's going to hang in DMR mode for a certain amount of time, because the assumption is when you did a transmission, somebody is going to probably answer back to you. So it's going to stay in DMR mode as long as there's DMR activity with this additional hang time. So let's say you're in D-Star mode. My experience a few years back with D-Star, I'd get in the reflectors. If you're in a very busy reflector, you're going to be stuck in D-Star mode, because there isn't enough time for that hang timer to expire for it to come out of D-Star mode and then go listening for the next mode. Likewise, if you're in a Yaesu System Fusion room, and it's a busy room, it's going to get stuck in System Fusion mode. So the recommendation is, if you want to do multiple modes, get multiple Raspberry Pis with multiple DV Megas. Configure one just for D-Star, configure one just for YSF, configure one just for DMR and or P25 if you have that capability. You'll be much happier that way. It does do multiple modes, but it's frustrating to try and get it out of one mode and into the next because it's going to try and maintain that mode long enough to make sure it doesn't drop any messages or miss any messages. Okay, additional questions.
This has been Ham Radio 2.0, a YouTube production by KC5HWB. Visit our website at www.livefromthehamshack.tv. Please also stop by our Facebook page at fb.me/hamradio2. Be sure and subscribe here on YouTube to keep up with all the new videos that are posted nearly every Monday. 73s everyone, and thanks for watching.